Podcast RSS feeds are neither interesting nor sexy. In fact, they can be very, very complicated to understand, but they power the whole of the podcasting industry. So in this video, I'm going to demystify podcast RSS feeds. I'm going to explain exactly what they are, what they do, and I'm going to make them completely not boring. Hey, I'm Mark Asquith, CEO and co-founder of Rebel Base Media. We're a podcast technology company that makes Captivate.fm, the world's only growth-oriented podcast host. So if you're checking out a brand new podcast host for your podcast needs, do go ahead and grab a 7-day free trial at Captivate.fm. Let's talk RSS feeds. First up, RSS stands for really simple syndication. Let's explain what an RSS feed is, how it works, and why it's important to your podcast. But the first thing I want you to understand is that really, you don't need to worry too much about RSS feeds. A podcast host like Captivate will generate an RSS feed, help you to submit that to Apple and Spotify and so on. It deals with all the settings, all the icky bits. An RSS feed, it's like a box of content. And what it does is, inside your podcast hosting settings, for example, inside Captivate or whoever you host your podcast with, you tell everyone what your podcast is called. You give it a cover art, that nice square image that you see. You give it a description, you give it some categories, and you essentially set up that podcast with everything that someone would need to understand what that podcast is about. That is the basis of your RSS feed. And all those settings, the cover art, the podcast title, they're essentially a label that goes on the box. So that when someone picks up this box and sees it, they think, okay, this is the Podcast Accelerator podcast. This is the picture for it. It teaches people podcasting. And it comes out 3 times a week and it lives in these categories on Apple and Spotify and so on. And then the way that this works is Apple, Spotify, Google, every other podcast directory on the planet, what you do is you basically say to them, and you can do this using Captivate's very simple distribution center. You essentially say to them, hey, I've created a new podcast and here is a box of information. That's my RSS feed. And it will tell you what the podcast is called. It will tell you what the cover art is and where that cover art lives. It will tell you the description, what categories that I think you as Apple or Spotify should put that inside your directory. And hey, if you look inside that box, what you'll see is that there are 5 episodes, 5 containers. And I want you to look inside those containers in order to get the MP3 location, the MP3 file, the cover art for that episode, the description, the title for that episode, and put those, Apple and Spotify, inside your search results. And when someone subscribes, I want you to make sure that you give the contents of this box to them automatically. Give them the contents of this box automatically so that my listeners, when they subscribe to my RSS feed in your podcast app like Apple Podcasts or Spotify or Google Podcasts, when someone subscribes, they automatically get the new container that I put in there every week that contains my new episode. They're already sent that because they are subscribed. So we're going to send it to them. So RSS feeds don't need to be complex. They're certainly not sexy. They're actually quite boring, but they are important. And the vital thing for you to remember is that your podcast host, Captivate.fm, for example, will take care of all that. All you have to do is follow the very simple instructions on how to set up your podcast using something like Captivate, okay? If you're curious about Captivate, check it out, Captivate.fm. You'll get a 7-day free trial. You'll see just how easy this is. But now, you're an expert in podcast RSS feeds. If you're a podcast geek, if you're just getting into podcasting, if you are trying to learn as much as you can about podcasting, how to start and grow a podcast, click subscribe on the channel and you'll find so very many videos that help you to do just